That's why I've always said, if we don't watch, William Ruto is going to be a dictator. I'm saying
right
this.
Before our eyes?
Before our eyes. Because when somebody says, I will sell KICC regardless of the heritage value, that is a dictator in the making. When somebody says, I'm going to do it regardless of the opinion of others, that's a dictator in the making.
Housing levy must pass.
Must pass, and it's an illegality. And then we influence the court now to say, we are giving you a leeway 45 days. What law is that?
Back in the days, you were part of the Four Sisters, Cyrus Jirongo, Sambu, William Ruto and yourself. And you are so big on political activism. You are calling out President Moi's leadership and checking on governance issues therein. If we are, as Kenyans and as voters, want to write off any possibilities of a dictator in the making, should we go back to those old days of being hugely into political activism, the civil society and the church playing its role the way it should be? Does that journey start there?
In politics, retirement is a question of personal decision and also public discussion. And therefore, people are getting themselves the responsibility of giving advice to Raila. They are missing the point. We in Azimio, we strongly believe Raila's role in the next election, whether he's running or is not running, is very critical. You cannot do without him and expect to succeed. And I'm sure even those from Kenya Kwanza must be hoping that one day Raila might say Ruto tosha, because people seem to realize Raila's support, but they don't seem to want to allow him to lead the country. Yeah. Twice or so, we feel his victory has been bungled.
Truly delighted to have you on Siasa Brigade, or I should say Richard Mwenje exclusive here on Herman Manyora channel, your go-to point on matters politics and governance here in Kenya and across the region. I'm yours truly, Richard Mwenje. Always a pleasure to have you on board. Now today, yet again, it is such an honor and a privilege to have former cabinet minister and a seasoned thought leader, Ruto Kiro, with us today to debunk some of the myths in the world of politics and also to give us nuggets of wisdom on how better we can revitalize the subject that is governance in this particular beloved country that is Kenya. So let's get straight into it with Ruto Kiro. Welcome on board, sir.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure all the time to be hosted by you.
It's actually a pleasure and such a humbling feeling on my side.
You.
Very well. Still looking sharp as always?
I try my best because the alternative is a disaster.
Many people went to our comment section and they are saying, this man is so good at dressing.
Thank you.
Who is your designer though?
I consult with my wife.
Oh.
Yeah, every morning before I get out, if she's not out of town, she'll tell me, no, this one change like this. And we've done very well. Yeah, we've been together for more than 35 years. 35 years? Yes.
Story for another day.
Asante.
But then again, let's go straight into it, into the world of politics. And we've seen recent calls from many legislators, especially those affiliated to Kenya Kwanza, who are calling for the retirement and the exit from the stage of Raila Odinga to head over to retirement. And they are saying he should follow in the footsteps of Uhuru Kenyatta and just go somewhere and have pin drop silence. You've been a seasoned leader. And if you look at Kenya's political chessboard, is it that such legislators do not understand that maybe Raila is the grandmaster in it and they're not seeing it?
Well, I think when it is convenient, we over-advise to our opponents with a view to destroying their own political base or a political game plan. If Raila needs to retire, it is he to tell us. It is his supporters to be able to release him. Because you see, at times you become captive of your supporters. For any election you run, there are enough people to tell you run. And for the last 4 elections, you cannot dismiss Raila as a serious political entity in this country. He's actually the single most institutionalized individual in Kenya. And that means those people, where are you going? What are you going to tell them? Number 2, in politics, retirement is a question of personal decision and also public discussion. And therefore, people are getting themselves the responsibility of giving advice to Raila. They are missing the point. We in Azimio, we strongly believe Raila has a role in the next election, whether he's running or he's not running, is very critical. You cannot do without him and expect to succeed. And I'm sure even those from Kenya Kwanza must be hoping that one day Raila might say Ruto tosha, because people seem to realize Raila's support, but they don't seem to want to allow him to lead the country. Yeah, twice or so, we feel his victory has been bungled, because I remember, the ones that I remember very well, is 2013, when the court of law, the Supreme Court, made a constitutional amendment by default, by determining which votes are supposed to be counted in the total tally to avoid a runoff. 2013, we could have easily had a runoff between Raila and Uhuru. In the last election, you know what happened. We did not know the results. The lights went off. Then in the evening, Chebukati gave us the news that now we are still trying to come to terms with. So at times, you know, in Africa, Richard, democracy is on the cross. It has been crucified by a number of elements. Those in power, they are complacent about the fact that they are in power, and they don't seem to realize other people also have ideas. So in the process, we compromise democracy. It is also done by those who are wheeler dealers, who infuse their ideas into the regime of the day for purposes of making money and creating a class of the elite. The third are the so-called colonial masters who have refused to leave Africa. Remember the French, for some strange reason, they signed some very draconian rules about the economy of the French-speaking nations in Africa. And today, West Africa, or the French conclave, is replete with coups after coups. And ask yourself, why is every coup popular? Why, you know, when there is a coup, you find people in the street. And the next coup, you find people, the same people in the street. Which means the people who are brought in through coup d'etat are people who are serving some transient interest belonging to those masters. And when you want to settle and now do whatever your country wants, like the late Thomas Sankara in Burkina Faso, they come, engineer a coup from your own lieutenant, who was your deputy for so long. You had been together in the military, then all of a sudden he comes and shoots you, and he becomes president for 27 years, Blaise Compaoré. So these are some of the things that any keen student of history and politics will understand, that Africa is still at the crossroads in terms of democratic institutions are concerned. There are no political parties, even here in Kenya. There is no party that has formed the government twice for the last 25 years. Whether it is NAC, whether it's PNU, whether it is Jubilee, whether it is DP, TNA, URP coalition, and now Kenya Kwanza, ANC, and you might almost say the next election, UDA may not be a factor. There may be another conglomeration of individuals who are coalescing around individuals or a coalition of tribes. Because in Kenya, we have coalition of tribes.
Very well.
Yeah.
And still talking matters, what portends Raila Odinga in the world of politics and governance, this huge, the clarion call for Raila Odinga to retire and head home for retirement and maintain silence is hugely coming from a section of young parliamentarians. Say Ndindi Nyoro and Kimani Ichung'wah, they have expressed that time and again, openly in the public. Would you say that them and many others are blinded to the realities of the huge sacrifices that Raila Odinga has made to the country over time?
They are not blinded. They know that Raila is still a factor, and they are scared of that nightmare. The other day they were entertaining that, okay, if it's Kalonzo, it will be walkover. But I think that it has increasingly come to them that if Kalonzo were to be supported by both President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, Kalonzo will be the next president. They are now chickening out from that arrangement. So all these, I don't take them seriously. I think at times they are playing to the gallery. At times they want their boss to be happy. At times they are actually scared of the face of Raila. Because Raila does not need to organize a public rally for 2 days. He just needs to appear, and a spontaneous crowd will emerge from somewhere.
As a seasoned leader and an ardent love of history, of matters, politics and governance, do you think these antics being used by mostly Kenya Council legislators can somewhat dampen the spirit of Raila Odinga and intimidate him to make sure that he exits the political scene?
No, I think Raila has seen it. Unless he himself makes a deliberate decision to say, I'm retiring and I'm handing over the baton of leadership to another generation, it is not as easy as they think. Because Raila has heard of it. He has been detained. He has been harassed. And he's gone through all this. So when he has some of these, at times he laughs it off. And those of us who are associated with him, we are not really scared. Because Raila actually is more dangerous by supporting somebody else, perhaps than running himself. You see, when he said Kibaki Tosha, you know, many people, they have different stories for that Kibaki Tosha thing. Do you know the truth is that we had not agreed we are going to announce the presidential candidate that day, because we were still consulting with Mr. Nyachai and from Serena. Personally, I went home. I went to Southlands. I drove myself. I didn't have the driver. So they crossed over on foot because they said, so what are we going to tell them? We're going to tell them we've agreed as joint opposition. We are going to present one presidential candidate, but the meeting will be on another day. So I realized, okay, it's anticlimax. I did not want to, you know, at times when you get to the crowd and you don't have a driver, you have a problem. So they crossed over on foot from Serena. I drove to Southlands where I was staying at that particular time. Then in the evening, as I watched the TV, there is rapturous applause, Kibaki Tosha. And the way Raila said, I don't know whether he intended to say that, because it is he who had gone to enlist the services of Mzee Nyachai to be part of us, because in his wisdom, which I had shared with him in the late Job Omino's house at Mudavadi a few nights before. He said, you people in NAK, if you run, you might win. As in LDP, we might also win. But if we have split forces, we run the risk of the project squeaking through. Because by then the project was Uhuru Kenyatta and his team in Kanu. And remember, the constitution at that particular time provided for first past the post. And Moi, I think in 2 elections, had been getting about 32, 33%. The previous elections, 97 and 92. Sure. So it was possible that with a bit of tinkering with the figures, President Uhuru would have won the election in 2002. So it is Raila who said, let's move in that direction. So at times when people say Raila sabotaged Kibaki, I say history is written through the lenses of the writer. And at times history is not fair. Very well. Because it can be twisted in a way that when you read and you lived through that time, you realize somebody must be cheating somewhere. Yeah.
Now let's advance that conversation further and now look at Azimio coalition. And my question will be, do you consider its political oxygen to be fast running out? And why I'm saying this is, if you look at the recent woes that Jubilee is experiencing, and also the departure of some of Raila's key lieutenants, Professor Tomo Jenda, Jalango, MP for Langata, they haven't really come from ODM, but they have gone to bed with the administration of the day. If you look at such woes that are in the line of Raila Odinga, would you say that Azimio as a coalition is fast running out of political oxygen?
Yeah, Azimio has got challenges just like any other political arrangement. Even Kenya Kwanza, not everybody is sitting pretty. Some of the individuals in Kenya Kwanza, we get it, that they are not happy. And even some of the ministers who happen to be coalition partners in Kenya Kwanza are not happy because some decisions are done without their concurrence. And that's why when I talk about Kibaki, it's not because he was my president or he appointed me minister, is because he respected every ministry. Even where a chairman is supposed to be appointed by the president, he will give you a chance to give a list of 2 or 3. And he's going to pick from that list, which means you have already prepared the material for him, and then whoever is picked is as good as the other, because you do not have any special preference for any of the candidates. So what I'm seeing is that it is a malaise that is in all political formations, because we've not built organic political parties that people get into it because they believe in them. They get into it because they are convenient vessels for elections. And therefore you find some people in UDA are not really UDA at heart. They are UDA just because where they come from, UDA is the prevalent party. And therefore even some people in ODM, they were in ODM with William Ruto before, and therefore they are past. And possibly they share certain common traits, whether it is in terms of wheeler dealings, or in terms of political persuasion, but it is more of commercial than political in my own considered opinion. So some of these individuals are normal because they are people who all the time must do things differently, because they are looking for ways of sorting out their basic problems. You know, I can assure you, Richard, if there is somebody who suffers more, is somebody sitting member of parliament, because the expectations from the people are beyond the capacity of that MP. In fact, I'm better off in retirement than when I was an MP.
Really?
I say so because, yes, I was getting 1 million shillings as minister for the 5 years, but I hardly had enough money at the end of the month to call it my own money, because I was earning about 50% from parliament, 50% from the ministry. And I used to take a lot of IOUs from the ministry, such that my 489,000, I remember that is the figure, I would end up with 89,000 on the day of pay. In between, somebody arrives from home, you don't have money, you just say, I owe you 20,000. You send somebody back because they don't believe the minister cannot have 20,000. So at times, we need also public education or some kind of social reengineering for people to understand that politicians are not magicians. Politicians are not ATMs. Politicians are not good investors. Politicians, the only thing that you can invest is that miserable car that after 5 years it's already ravaged and it is almost ready for salvage. So some of these things is that we pretend. There's so much pretense. Yeah? There is so much pretense in our society. Politicians are suffering. And I've not come to put a case for politicians. In short, I'm saying some of those MPs, they are doing it for convenience. If they don't go back to the flock, they will not see the next parliament.
Very well then. Yeah. Let's advance that conversation further on matters governance. And there has been this huge constant clarion call for us to embrace rotational presidency. And you've said, say, if Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga hugely endorse Kalonzo Musyoka, and then 2027 it is his for his taking, then maybe thereafter we go to another committee and all that. Do you support that that initiative of us to embrace rotational presidency, or as long as we have the best man and woman at the top of the seat, it doesn't really matter where they are from? What's your view on that?
You know, I'm a biased person because you see, from my community we have had 2 presidents since independence, and from the other community, the Kikuyu, they have had 3.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm biased because if I said I don't believe in rotational presidency, people will say Kirwa doesn't want us to have a share of the cake. But let us demystify the presidency. Why do we give it so much premium and we make somebody a dictator? That's why I've always said, if we don't watch, William Ruto is going to be a dictator. I'm saying
right
this.
Before our eyes?
Before our eyes. Because when somebody says, I will sell KICC regardless of the heritage value, that is a dictator in the making. When somebody says, I'm going to do it regardless of the opinion of others, that's a dictator in the making.
Housing levy must pass.
Must pass, and it's an illegality. And then we influence the court now to say, we are giving you a leeway of 45 days. What law is that? That you sanitize an illegality and constitutional arrangement and you give leeway. It's like you are a thief and you've seen a thief in front of you and the thief has stolen the cow and you say, I'm giving you 3 days to return the cow to the owner. The cow belongs to the owner from the beginning. And that decision was null and void ab initio. Now, my strong belief is that you can have a president from the same community after and after. But the problem is we must also demystify the presidency, and also we must re-engineer our social dimensions so that tribalism takes the backstage. Today, if you come, like you now, you come from Trans Nzoia, if you became minister, after 5 years, we'll be saying, he has done nothing for us, the people of Trans Nzoia. We will not look at your performance nationally. It is us, the people of Trans Nzoia, who must sort of own you. You become property to some individuals.
Entitlement and all.
And they have some, I don't know, I don't want to use some nasty words, but they have a misguided entitlement to certain performances. A good person is good, whether it's from Muranga or from Kajiado or is from Teso, as long as, and we need also to move the way Tanzania. You know, the first president of Tanzania who comes from a large tribe is the late Magufuli. The rest of them, they have come from small tribes. In Kenya, it is your tribe first must give you support for us to accept you
as our leader.
As our leader. We would want to have somebody from Mbere, somebody from Kuria, somebody from Teso, somebody from a small community, as long as we know he's going to perform. And that may make the difference. Because you see, every president will surround himself by some funny guys. I call them funny guys because some of them don't have basic qualification even to run the offices they run. But they feel, they become what I call make-believe individuals who create the aura, the feeling that, okay, without Kirwa, the president will not listen to you.
Mimi ndio mkarabati.
Yeah, mkarabati. You know, and you see the word corruption has been misused. Ukarabati na corruption, eti tufanye corruption kidogo, and that is tufanye ukarabati kidogo. So these are some of the things, Richard, that really worry me. I've told you before that I had the privilege of being in Tanzania in my formative years. 10 of my first 14 years I was in Tanzania. Because my parents were living there. And I feel Tanzania is still a role model, despite the fact that they are now poking our noses by making us look bad as a country. But I still feel Tanzania is the place to be. Tanzania, they have been able to build a party that has transited almost 6 presidents now, and the same party.
That stood the test of time. A
test of time. And Kanu could have achieved the same if President Moi had not almost changed the process of choosing the next leader.
Very well.
Who would have been president, but later. But at that time, the people who were at the forefront were people like the late Saitoti, people like the current opposition leader, Kalonzo Musyoka, Raila himself. To a certain extent, even Musalia, had it been picked as a candidate, he would have almost made it without a lot of squabbles. So my worry is that let us build political institutions that will live, will face the test of time.
Very well.
And I thought William Ruto would do that. But now he runs the risk of destroying UDA and bring another outfit for election convenience.
Very well. And now to scuttle away any possibilities of there being a dictator in the making, and you say that Ruto could be the dictator in the making here. Back in the days, you were part of the 4 sisters, Cyrus Jirongo, Sambu, William Ruto and yourself. And you are so big on political activism. You are calling out President Moi's leadership and checking on governance issues therein. If we are as Kenyans and as voters want to write off any possibilities of a dictator in the making, should we go back to those old days of being hugely into political activism, the civil society and the church playing its role the way it should be? Does that journey start there?
The journey starts with each individual not giving extra premium to a mortal human being. William Ruto is a very intelligent Kenyan, but at times he's been overrated. Overrated in the sense that some things even he does not understand, he's been made to believe that he knows. Of course, from his training and from my training, we've taken different paths.
Sure.
And I cannot claim even what I've learned in school is enough. There is so much wisdom somewhere in society that when an old man comes to your house in the morning seeking advice, he ends up advising you better. By the time he leaves, you realize he's oozing wisdom that you did not have before that old man arrived. So William Ruto, having completed his education up to PhD, has been given the feeling that he knows everything. And I think he knows something, but he does not know everything. There is so much that we need to assist him to steer away from the road to dictatorship.
Very well.
Activism, yes. Society must also be vigilant. Anytime you relegate your position to a political leader, you run the risk of being overrun by that leader, and you run the risk of brooding dictatorship in your own backyard. That is what worries me, and I'm saying it, and openly so, because I'm worried.
You're worried? Yeah,
Ruto Rigathi combination is a disaster in the making.
It is a disaster in the making. Now let's narrow down to Kipruto Arap Kirwa, the Premier Agriculture Minister during Kibaki's tenure, first term in office, and also a seasoned leader, especially back in your days as the MP of Cherangani. You are taking concern with Ruto's style of leadership, and you know very well Kenya's politics is still by and large ethnic based. Are you, and you've been a casualty of that in some of your bids, political bids, say Senator in Trans Nzoia and all that. Are you not afraid that this could somewhat compromise so much on your side, your vested interest, business interest, family interest, you name it? Don't you think you'll be considered a betrayer within your community?
Well, some might have said so, but some are almost revising their thoughts about it because they have realized what I said 2 years ago has come to pass. I say so because the time I entered politics, I was admired. I had certain ideals, which possibly was proven by time not to be realistic. But today, at my age, if I was to pretend to say things that will be comfortable for me to just traverse the country, then I'm an hypocrite. Today, I'm more interested in the future after me. I'm more interested in the future after William Ruto. I'm more interested in the future 10, 20, 40 years from today. How is Kenya going to be? Therefore, I don't want to be comfortable by making it appear that to appease anybody. Really, I have no apologies to make to any individual. I only fear God. Unlike Waititu said, he fears God and porridge. I don't fear porridge. You just arrange it for your own consumption. But what I fear is God, and I also fear betraying the interests of the people of Kenya, and particularly the people of Cherangani, who have made me what I am.
Sure.
People know me because of them. They allowed me uninterrupted 20 years or 4 terms as their member of parliament.
Sure.
So I still feel I owe it to them. Perhaps I would be somewhere as a retired teacher.
Retired teacher.
Yes. Or somewhere in one of the embassies.
Or back in Tanzania.
Or back in Tanzania. Which I can go. At times they threaten me that go back to Tanzania. Say, after all, Tanzania is part of East Africa.
With your mastery of Swahili, go back there.
I can go there. Let me tell you the truth, Richard. Do you know, when Nyerere was born, he was born in Kenya.
Really?
He was born in Kenya, where Butiama, where his home is, was in Kenya. Now there was this arrangement. You remember, you've heard of the Kilimanjaro.
Sure.
Then now there is the story of Lake Victoria. So the colleague from Germany decided that you guys, you've taken the source of River Nile is in British East Africa. Now you've taken the greater part of the lake, move the border, so that you give me a piece of the lake. So the border, when it was moved, Nyerere was taken to Tanzania. So these boundaries are meaningless in my opinion. I could be a Tanzanian. What stops me? Of course, you know, up to 1923, the part of the country where you live and I live was in Uganda. It is 1923 where the king now, in his pleasure, I don't know what made him get pleased, decided that part is going to be administered from Kenya. Otherwise, it would have been, the Rift Valley, part of the Rift Valley would have been in Uganda, including Trans Nzoia, where I come from. So some of these boundaries, to me, they mean nothing.
Anytime you can walk and head over to Tanzania.
Yes, and I'm happy.
and sit
But
under
they
the
cannot take me there because I've invested here.
in Kenya.
And I'm a serious investor.
There you have it from Kipruto Arap Kirwa, Premier Cabinet, Agriculture Cabinet Minister during first term of Ruto, Mwai Kibaki's tenure, and also seasoned Cherangani Member of Parliament, and also a seasoned thought leader and a celebrated public scholar. He's been our guest today on Siasa Brigade. It's always a pleasure to have him on board, and he's such a rich walking repository of history on matters politics and governance. Kipruto Arap Kirwa, asante sana.
Yes, it's my pleasure.
It's indeed, it's a pleasure as well on my side to wrap up the year with you on board.
Yes.
And I know many people are really, really happy that you are the one to close the year for us, and they want to listen from you. Maybe Christmas message and New Year message.
Well, Kenyans, wherever you are, inside Kenya and outside Kenya, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. I just pray that next year is going to be better than this year. And as always, I've always maintained, we pray for the administration of the day. Because by William Ruto succeeding in economic development, we all succeed in our own corners.
Well, there you have it from Kipruto Arap Kirwa. Asante sana, Kongoi. Thank you for coming.
Asante.
Asante sana. And have yourselves a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And remember, it goes beyond a change of fashion and diet. So you need to be kind to your neighbor and people around you. It has been such an awesome learning curve with you throughout the year. And we, as Nairobi Review and as Richard Manyora, host of Business Glide and Siasa Brigade, it has been such a joyous feeling to have you on board and to really support us in many ways. Until we see each other next year, God bless. Do enjoy the rest of your day.